welcome.
Thank you.
Tamara Erde, if I pronounce it correctly, yes. You've made This Is My Land. I'm presuming that not everyone in the audience has just seen the film, so maybe we'll just introduce it shortly. You've made a film, a documentary about the Israeli and Palestine education system, talking to teachers and students in different areas and trying to get an impression of, I guess, how the conflict is being resolved or not, or perpetuated in the education system. In the beginning of the film, you'd say something like, I didn't question everything that was taught to me, but only later when I joined the army.
Yeah.
Can you say how, under what circumstances did you start doubting what was being told?
Yeah, so actually, indeed, I always was a very good Zionist student, and I really believed, and I really wanted to go to serve in the army, and I was very motivated. And then when I was in the army, I was in the information unit, and it was in 2002, and there was the second Intifada. And actually, it was the first time where I saw things from a different perspective. It means not from the news or from what I was always told, but from really the everyday decision making on the field. And it wasn't one specific thing. It was really the way things were handled and how decisions were taken and how human life were looked at, etc. That at first, also it was not like one day I just changed my mind completely. It just made me not being so sure that everything I was thinking was right. And then after I finished my service, I started reading about what happened in 1948 when Israel was established and reading about the Palestinian history. And then after that, I started meeting Palestinians. I started going to Palestinian cities, etc. And so it was kind of such a process that in the end made me really see also the other picture.
But what was the information unit? What was that?
It's, I don't know in English how you call it. It's really the intelligence, yeah, thank you.
What were you doing there?
Yeah, basically. I mean, yeah, what you see in in films of.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, but that was sort of a unit for distorting information. But that was the location that you started doubting everything.
Yeah, but again, it was just because it's the first. Basically, it's the first time when you see. In a way, it's a bit cynical to say it, but it's the first time you see the other side. You see the Palestinians, and even though you are in a fight mode with them, and it was a very tense times. It was the times where there were many attacks on both sides, etc. But you also see people for the first time, because in the press and in school, etc. You never. I mean, it's always the conflict. It's always this war, this attacks on the other side, but it's never people. And I guess for me also, what was important in this process that I, for the first time, even though I was listening to their phone calls or whatever, I saw really people on this other side, and I saw also the way, as I said, decisions are taken. For example, if you need to, you can decide to treat something in a certain way, very specific, or you can just decide to expose something because it's easier or faster. That kind of decisions were the sort of decisions that made me rethink about what I was doing.
And how did you get from there to being a filmmaker?
I guess it was two parallel processes, because on the one side I was reading and studying about this Palestinian history and the history of Israel also, but from newer aspects. And on the other hand, I did my first master in arts, and I decided to do a documentary film that was not political at that moment, but this was the first time I did a documentary, and actually I liked it, so I decided to go on with this.
Yeah. You said also in the beginning of the film, I come back to Israel, because just to get a clear picture, you're not living there.
No, in the last 5 years I've been living in France. I did my second master there, and I decided to stay, both for personal reasons, but also for political reasons, and for doing my films. I think that being outside the place I'm talking about enables me a sort of distance that is important for me.
But what are political reasons? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, for me, I mean, today I don't agree with the ways things are being handled in Israel and in the Israeli politics and in the situation there. So, I mean, I still always, there's these two sides to it, because people always tell me also, so you need to stay and influence from inside. And I mean, it has certain truth to it, but for me also as a filmmaker, I think that the distance enables also other things, that when you live inside a society, it's very hard to detach in the everyday life from the rest.
Did you, I mean, jumping just to the now, you made this film. Did what you discovered surprise you? Did things become more political than when you were there?
I don't know if they were always political there, because I guess it's a country that was born in a war state, so things were always very political. But what surprised me maybe is, I think that I was sure that things will change yet, because in my generation there was no internet, TV was much, there was one channel, for example, and now there's all the information is open, and so I was very interested to see what it will do, and I was sure that it will change things. Unfortunately, it did change in the sense that we talk more about things, and you cannot hide today anything. So things that I never heard in school, for example, like the Nakba or like massacres, etc., they are being talked today. But the thing is, what do you do with it? What conclusions do you make out of it? And how do you make the children look at it? And I think that surprised me for the bad, in a sense, because today what they teach you is that, okay, there were these things, they were not good things, but we just had no other way, or we just were forced to do it. And you don't like, and the children today, even with all these things they have, they rather like just go on Facebook and chat about some everyday life things, but they don't go and search beyond that. And I think that the systems also doesn't encourage them to go and search beyond that. In my generation, at least, I guess there was some kind of curiosity and the feeling that not everybody had this process that I had, but the feeling that at some point you felt that things were hidden from you, or you were lied in a certain aspect, it pushed you to go and dig what today, I guess, is less happening.
Could you say how representative, I don't know the exact English word, it escapes you for the moment, but you visit these schools, you talk to these teachers. How what are the relations between these ideas in reality in all of Israel? I mean, and for instance, how difficult was it to enter these schools and talk to the teachers and get them to talk on camera?
Yeah, so actually, I was rather surprised. The teachers themselves, they were very open. I saw many teachers in order to choose a certain amount of them, and they were all very open, the kids as well. And so in that stance, it was quite surprising well. The problem was the Ministry of Education, because in the Israeli side, what I had to do is give them a list of all the teachers I wanted to film. And then even if it's an interview in their home, for example, if they're working teachers for the ministry, they had to approve them, and then they did a sort of inquiry about them, and they actually didn't authorize all the teachers that they thought inappropriate. Strangely enough, all those that were on the left side, they didn't authorize, while on the right side, for example, the colonist teacher, they authorized. I had a list of 20 colonist teachers from which I could choose, but I hardly had anyone from the left side, or from center left even, and so I had to go and search for private schools that teach the same curriculum, but at least that the teachers don't depend on the ministry's money, so they were still, they could be filmed without the ministry's agreement.
Yeah, and how did they? I mean, even the moderate teachers are really outspoken. You feel the complexity of the issue because they don't, even if they're sort of left wing, or I sense they're left wing, they raise the children in conflict.
Of
I mean,
course.
that's they use the language of conflict.
Of course, and I guess it's really hard not to use I mean, this is the language, they live inside it, and even if they put themselves sometimes questioning this, it's very hard to really detach yourself from what they live in the everyday life. And also, even when they are in private schools, for example, you still have certain censorship. For example, a teacher, no matter if it's in private or in not private school, that says the word Nakba legally is supposed to pay an I don't know how it's called in English, like a fine of 3,000 shekels or something like this, and then the second time, if he repeats it, he can be fired. So there is still this is legally, of course, you can say it and hope that there won't be kids that say it. But it did happen already that parents of kids called the Ministry of Education saying this teacher said that, this and that, and that caused real problems. Or even, for example, there was an initiation, it was a European initiation to make a book that will show the two sides, like the Palestinian history and the Israeli history on the same book. And it was done a few years ago. And I've spoken to the teachers who did it, and for example, it was forbidden by the Ministry of Education to use it in classes. And they all got letters telling them, if you don't stop using this book right away, you are going to be fired. So I guess it's the system plus the reality that makes it very, very hard for even for teachers who want to change. It's hard.
Because you also visit this Neve Shalom
Neve
school.
Shalom, yeah.
Yeah. How many are there? Or is it just one?
Neve Shalom is very particular. It's the only school. You have a chain of sort of American schools where you have 5 or 6 of them, but they concentrate more on the language. They teach the same language, but they don't enter to the contents and the history of the two sides. So Neve Shalom is really unique.
Because they have 2 teachers in front of every classroom?
And because they really teach the two histories in a way. They don't teach the ordinary curriculum, but the Palestinian teacher can really express also her history.
Yes.
So.
And incidentally, this is the one teacher that at the end says she has no hope left, so that's a bit worrying. But I was wondering, you talk to them off camera also. I mean, how difficult is it to run such a school where 2 sides are being taught? It's sort of a hopeful spot in the system, you know?
Yeah, it is, and I must admit, when I started filming in Neve Shalom, I was sure it will be like the scenes that are the most lightened in the film and the most hope-giving in the film, and it was not, in the end, it's not that case. I mean, for me, the scenes I was filming in Neve Shalom, both what we see in the film and also what all the hours I was filming there, were very difficult ones, because you see also the limits of this dream, and you see, I think it's still an idea that could work very well in the future, but I think that the societies today and the situation today is in a way not ready for this yet, because for example, even I was talking to the teacher and she was explaining to me that the idea was to have teachers that speak both perfectly the 2 languages in the class. But for example, and so I asked her, but how come that the Israeli teacher, he doesn't speak very good Arabic? And she said, yet we tried to find teachers and we just couldn't find teachers that speak perfectly Arabic and that there are good teachers and that are willing to teach here, etc., etc. So we still, I mean, it's still a school, a mixed school, but they are still the minority inside a state that is treating them as it does, etc., etc., etc. So there are still many obstacles for this. Or like this girl who says she's coming to this school, so you imagine that her parents are very open, etc. And she says her mother wants her to study Arabic for being in the army, etc. So
in the intelligence unit.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there were many examples like this. After that, of course, there were also very nice moments when you see that the kids are still communicating with each other.
Yeah.
And there is something nice that this teacher told me, that maybe today they are still not ready for changing their minds, and they still have their parents and the society's pressure. But maybe some years from now, one of them will suddenly change or will remember something from his schoolmates. And
because one of the things that the guide in the concentration camp says is very wise, I think, about between all those monuments, it's hard to talk about the future and take one step further, as another teacher says it. But is that generally the mood? But you have to, I mean, as a people, you have to keep the faith until the moment is right for a society to deal with this. But is that, yeah?
Yes, and I think also one of the problems, also that in a state of constant war that is so long term, it's very hard not to attach, and it's very human. I mean, I understand it completely, but it's very hard not to attach to all these mourning feelings and all this memorial of wars, of soldiers, etc. Because the price that the society is paying is really painful and is really high. But I think that, and what people tend to do is to stick to this grieving atmosphere, I guess, and it's very moving. I mean, even I remember myself as a kid. It were the days that were the most. It influences you for months after that. You have these ceremonies for like the kids they say there, and it is very, very powerful. But in a way, the problem is that then you stop there. You don't think, okay, this is the situation today, and of course it is very painful. But how can I change this, and how can I not just stop here and continue living in this fear and then reproducing and reproducing? But I think that for the society, when it's in this situation, it's really hard to get out of it.
And talking to the children off camera, maybe. I mean, in front of the classroom, there's a sort of group dynamic, I can imagine. And maybe they'll say other things off camera. Did you get the impression there's room for hope there? Talking to children?
Talking to children in a way, it always gives you hope, because you see that in a way that they are always innocent and open and that it's like a sort of a white paper that you can really change. But then I don't remember anything they said. That they were very open also before the camera. They didn't have many restrictions. They spoke really what they wanted to say. And I think that it's a mixture of hope because they are children and because you see that they are innocent, and of very non-hope, I would say, because you see that already at these ages they have the influences from all these things. So
yeah, good. Did you? I mean, I have to think when you're saying this about this teacher in the settlement, who is saying that he wants to teach them a more two-sided view or something, but in fact he's totally not doing that. I was wondering, were you surprised by how the language is being hijacked and reused like Newspeak in 1984 in schools? Or I mean, did you know that, or was it a bit of a surprise?
No, I mean, it was something I discovered on the way, and it was very interesting for me to see how everything, the terms are being, I guess it's everywhere, but it's always interesting to see it, and in schools even more, how we reuse terms in different methods, and how we change our perception of, and it's just like this kid says that he doesn't know anymore what peace means. I remember that when I grew up, the word peace was the word, and in all the publicity things and everywhere, it was just after the Oslo agreements and before Rabin was killed and the Second Intifada, and it was really the slogan. And today, for example, you hardly hear this word anymore. So it's also a matter of which words we use when and what do they represent, and it is very changeable and flexible for people.
How big is the movement in Israel to change this? Or is this an all-powerful educational system down from the ministry?
There are, of course, there are teachers who want to change. There are some organizations who are trying to change, but the ministry is very, very powerful, and it's a very political ministry, the Ministry of Education. It has always been. And I even when there was, for example, some years ago, there was a left education minister. He tried to put in the program, for example, poems of Mahmoud Darwish, the Palestinian poet. And like a few days after he was doing this, the government was almost falling because there was some in the parliament there was a discussion, and then they just took it out afterwards. So
about this topic specifically, okay.
Yeah, for that reason. So I guess even in the ministry itself, when you have someone from the left who is trying to change, the margin is very limited. So,
but most of the teachers seem somewhat, not defeated maybe, but defeatist. Is that the right word? It's very difficult. You can feel the current they have to swim against.
Yeah, and also I must say I chose, because I found it more interesting, I chose teachers that still try to change in some ways, but most of the teachers, they just follow. So what we see is the teachers that are feeling maybe defeated but are still trying to change, but it's not the majority. The majority is really those who are just following the exact content they should teach and try not to think about it.
Was it difficult to get them to talk in general? How many people did you ask, for instance?
When I did the research, I met really lots of teachers from both sides. And then, as I said, I don't know, maybe 50 or more. But then, as I said, there were many criteria. I wanted, first there were the ministry's censorship, etc. And then there was those who speaks good in front of cameras, and then there was the schools also, because I wanted also the classes to be interesting and the kids to be reactive and participating. So
was it difficult as an outsider, or more easier for an outsider to make this? Or was there a sort of hostile environment?
Actually, for me, what was interesting and maybe quite helpful was the fact that I'm half insider, half outsider, because I grew up there, and I know very well both the languages and the mentality and the way people think, etc. But I'm also from the outside, because the film is a French production film, and it was important for me also to keep this distance, even in financing the film and even in producing it, etc. So it was a balance that I think worked well for me, at least.
Yeah. Will it be shown in Israel?
It was shown in a festival already in Haifa in Israel, and in Ramallah in the Goethe Center. And in March and April we are gonna distribute it more in both places.
Okay. And what were the reactions? Yeah, the film festival is always a specific audience.
It's hard to say. It was very a cinema festival. So and it was just one screening here and one screening there. So.
We almost will stop. So if there are any questions, please ask them now. Who saw the film? And you must raise questions. Did you like it?
Thanks.
Were you being disturbed by what you saw?
Yeah, congratulations. I mean, an excellent film, very engaging in ways I didn't expect. Do you think after this that you will be more drawn into the politics of it, or do you just want to stay more as a filmmaker? Do you see
filmmaking? No. When I was a child, I always said I want to be prime minister. Really, it was my dream. And my mother was like, what? And no, today I really don't want to be neither a prime minister nor a politician. I want to make films. So but I continue to work on these subjects, both on Israel and Palestine. Now I try also to do something in France, because I live there, so I need to, but films.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
So you are Israeli?
French.
French, but you were born and raised there?
Yeah.
In Israel. So the fact that when you went to Israeli school, like in the settlement, there was no issues, and when you went to in the territories, in a school, the kids call you she's not Jewish. So could you tell us how you were welcome in the school?
Yes. So in that school, in particular, Ziad, the teacher, he chose at first not to tell them, and then later on, like he does in the class, to explain them the difference between Israelis, Zionists, Jewish, non-Zionist, etc., all this, which is very complex for those kids in this particular situation to realize. But basically, I was, wherever I went, I was well received, knowing that, of course, I put very clearly my positions, what I did since I left Israel, how I see things, etc. I mean, I'm not sure an Israeli who goes there with an Israeli flag, no, he will not be well received. But I mean, at least from my experience, they were very open. They didn't want to judge. They were, yeah.
Yes?
Thank you very much for the film. It was fascinating. And I'm wondering, as a filmmaker, what are you hoping will be the impact? And maybe it's more long-term. Or maybe it's more something that you see will affect people when they're a bit older and have more experience, as you found for yourself.
So I guess for me as a filmmaker, there's two things. First, for Israel and Palestine, I really hope that teachers, it could affect teachers, that they will have the courage to do things to change this. The Ministry of Education, I would have loved to, but I don't count on it, really. And kids also, really, that they see that they can raise questions, that they can doubt, that they can really doubting for me is maybe the biggest lesson of this all. And I think that also for the international, because I've been talking also with many people about their education in other places around the world, and I think that even for other places, it's really important for them maybe to see, because we always take like textbooks and history and what we study in school like as the truth, and that's it. And to just rethink about things that they were being taught or being told that are not always the only truth. So.
Okay. I want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you for coming.
Tamara Erde.
Thank you. Thank you.